Okay, hello and welcome everyone to today's event, looking at new findings on reporting, BI, and digital transformation for Dynamics AX. I'm Jason Gumpert from MSDynamicsWorld.com. I'll be hosting today's event, and we're excited to be able to share with you some brand new findings from a recent survey of Dynamics ERP and CRM users on what the term digital transformation really means to them, and also examining some of those digital transformation concepts or priorities in the context of other recent survey data that we have gathered on reporting, analytics, and BI priorities more specifically among AX and other Dynamics users and partners. So I just want to quickly outline the overall agenda for today and do a bit of housekeeping to set things up. We do welcome your feedback. We ask that you use the Q&A block that you should see anywhere on the on the right side of the screen to ask questions at any point. We'll be making at least a couple of we'll be making time in the middle and at the end of the session to take questions that you have. And we're going to start things off by just doing some introductions with our panelists today. Then we'll move straight ahead into a discussion of the various survey results and findings and what they say about the AX landscape. And we'll really look forward to getting some input from both of our panelists on that. We'll look at data. We'll look at other participant feedback. And obviously, we'd welcome your comments and questions as we go. Then we'll also be setting aside time in the second half to have our panelists each also take a few minutes to speak more specifically about their own services and their own solutions and how they reach AX customers and provide value in that realm. And we'll then probably wrap up by taking a few more questions after those mini presentations, and that should be a full hour here. So it should be fun, and let's get started. First, I want to just allow both of our panelists, Anthony, Deanna, and Jason Carter, to just introduce themselves to us so we can kind of get everything level set as we move ahead. So, Anthony, why don't we say hello to you first. Welcome. Thanks for joining today.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. My name is Anthony Deanna with Facto Global. We'll talk a bit more about Facto later on, but Facto is a unified corporate performance management product. So planning, budgeting, forecasting, reporting, and analysis all integrated into one solution. Personally, I've been in this corporate performance management space for over 20 years, working with Hyperion and Cognos and many different products like that. So look forward to today and getting everybody's feedback and comments throughout. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Jason Carter from Globe Software, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you. And so I'm with Globe Software. We're the makers of Atlas. It's the most used reporting and upload solution, Microsoft Office-based for Dynamics AX users, and we'll talk about when we look at the product a little bit later. Gets beyond AX and works with other data sources as well. In my role, I manage the Americas region. We're headquartered down in Australia. I manage business development across North and South America, and I've been with Globe for about 5 years. Prior to joining Globe, I was with Microsoft for about 10 years in the Dynamics division.
All right, great, welcome. So let's talk just briefly about the survey data that we're going to be referring to today, and it's based on 2 different surveys, one from the May 2016 timeframe, the other is even newer from September. MSDynamicsWorld created and ran both of those surveys independently, and between the 2 surveys we had over 500 valid responses from Dynamics users and professionals, and so there were different questions asked to the partners and the consultants versus the users. We want to understand some of the basics about the maturity of our readers in terms of their BI and reporting capabilities and skills, their organizational maturity, and we also wanted to get a first read in this September timeframe on what they think about this idea of digital transformation. And I'm just going to a little trouble moving my slides. Hopefully you can see that. So in terms of that BI survey, you can see the breakdown here of AX was about a quarter of the participants, and that particular survey had about half the responses were from customers and the other half were from professionals. In terms of digital transformation, again, we really wanted to understand, is it just hype? Do people in the dynamic space, especially our readers, do they believe in it as an idea? Is it something that actually is relevant to what they're going through right now? And what does it really mean? Does it mean cloud? Does it mean just IT planning and investment? Does it mean reimagining your own business processes for the future? And what we found in looking at those results and the reporting, the earlier sort of reporting and BI survey results, is that there's a lot of overlap, I guess you would say, and sort of cross-referenced findings that are really worth diving into a little bit more, both today, but I think also going forward from now. This is certainly two different areas that we really are going to want to continue to watch in the next year, multiple years. In terms of digital transformation survey here, you can see we asked a little bit of a different question here in terms of your products of interest. So people who responded to this, it wasn't mutually exclusive. So we just sort of, on the left there, you see that AX, 45% of people who responded said that AX is a product of interest. The other thing I want to call out is over to the right, 365 Enterprise. We also asked if that was of interest, and another 15%, or actually about 17% of people said that 365 Enterprise, which is obviously the next step in the evolution of Dynamics AX, is also of interest to at least some of the people. I think we want to keep watching that, and we probably even want to see, going forward, how that grows and how it changes and how people's attitudes maybe even differ between those who are focused on the 365 product versus who are still very focused on AX. And frankly, I actually would welcome anyone in the audience to let us know what your interest is in 365, how focused you are on that at this point. All right. So, I know I've talked a little bit about why digital transformation, why ask about it, what does it really mean. We wanted to know where it was observable within the MSDW readership, and we do see clearly that we see it, well, first of all, in terms of watching Microsoft and their technology vision, their roadmap overall, the Dynamics releases that have been coming out recently, both obviously, today's November 1st, so today is the 365 official launch, and we have the NAV 2017 release. We have other releases that are due in combination with things like Power BI, Power Apps and Flow, which also are released today, Office 365, a range of Azure services that continue to evolve. I mean, there's a lot of a push from Microsoft, obviously, to find ways to get people to invest in more automation and more cloud capabilities. But we also want to look for ways to validate that we could observe that with our readers. And how can we tie those trends together with more sort of with practical and meaningful things like building a good reporting strategy, managing your data, improving customer service, which we'll see will come up in a few minutes. And overall strategy and investment choices for technology, I think, is the other key area that we really wanted to sort of bring that back down to a realistic level with. So with that sort of set up, I want to move on to actually looking at some of those survey findings. And to start things off, I want to start off this digital transformation survey just by asking, is this a realistic concept? Is this something they actually think is influencing your organization, your leadership, the decisions they're making, the investments they're making? And over 75% said yes, it is. Either it is realistic or it's probably an influence today. Only, you can see that only about 25% or a little less said that there's probably not, or it's not a real trend or a real influencer on where their business is actually heading. And, in terms of how it actually matters, what the priorities are that people consider part of, that they would sort of categorize under digital transformation as a theme. Here's what AX users told us in terms of their priorities. And, you see right at the top there is reporting and analytics, which is obviously nice because that's what we really want to focus on today in terms of in terms of how it impacts ERP and what decisions people have to make. So I do want to bring in our panelists now, and I want to tie it back to reporting and analytics. So participants in the reporting and analytics study said they are meeting enough of their current. The ones who are saying they're meeting enough, it actually fell quite dramatically this year compared to last year. And when you look at some of the additional feedback, it's clear that there's plenty of organizations facing various kinds of problems when it comes to meeting their reporting needs. So the question I want to put to our panelists, are expectations changing among business decision makers and reporting and BI users around what the tools should deliver to them as end users in this year, and are they evolving into the future? And Jason, why don't I give you this one first? Are those expectations changing?
Yeah, I mean, they're changing rapidly, but people have a hard time defining what they need. If you tie back into the last couple of slides, you mentioned the people that are answering the digital transformation is important. It's one of those terms, though, that's a little bit like when we talked about big data and different, kind of industry buzzwords where people get that it's important, but don't have a handle on exactly what it means. But the general sense is, it means speed. It means making decisions faster than your competitor. It means serving the customer faster than you did before, and all of that relies on data, which is why in the slide just before this, I think people are recognizing that sort of central, whatever digital transformation means in their business and their industry, it's got to center around people having access to data more quickly for everything that they need to do.
All right, great. And Anthony, anything you would add there?
Yeah, I mean, I did find this interesting because, to your point, the number of people or how they responded, I think, did change quite a bit from last year. I think more people had needs being met last year than this year, so that's telling me that the challenges are becoming greater, the amount of data coming in is probably greater, and to what Jason just said is exactly that. I need to get better, easier access to data. Also, though, the problems that are occurring don't go away. I mean, you see some of the bullet points there, and those are the same problems that have been around, as long as we've been doing these things, so the BI cubes are stuck, right? I can only get certain data, not what I want. Everybody's still using Excel, whether you like it or not. People are going to land in Excel. They need an easy way to integrate with it, and then the ability to get secure data. And it's funny that they say secured reports because really the report is almost secondary. It's where the data is coming from, right? I need secure data and access to that data. But people still have that mentality of the securing of reports, back in FRX and things like that, where security is done not at the data level, but at the report level, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. So, I'm not completely surprised by the comments on the right. I am surprised, though, that, the amount of needs being met is actually decreasing, it seems, as opposed to, increasing with better technology.
Yeah, certainly something we want to watch to see if this was just a blip in this particular year, or if that does stay low. All right, so moving on, we also asked sort of how people's organizations are approaching this idea of digital transformation. Have they sort of transformed their company from some of the older, approaches like paper-based processes, manual processes, disconnected systems, versus, versus really taking an approach that they feel makes them digital businesses. Only a small percentage of they're operating primarily as digital businesses. It's as you move to the right in this chart, people are taking. The most people say they're taking measures to change now. Others, the second most common is that they're preparing for changes. And then there's a sizable chunk of respondents who said their businesses are not really taking any measures or, increasing their investments today. There were all sorts of comments on this one. Some said they were making changes ad hoc to fill gaps. One person actually noted that they're sort of deploying a new Dynamics ERP solution right now, and they're tying in SharePoint to try to prepare themselves for Office 365, which we haven't really touched on yet here. But there's people thinking about how they're going to approach it in a range of different ways and the steps they're going to use. So when it comes to actual challenges, technology challenges that most concern people, maybe in terms of getting there, this is what they told us, the top 5 concerns, and there were others, but the ones that really jumped out: complexity, ability to do collaborative planning, building a technology platform, not having those ad hoc, sort of gap fills, replacing legacy systems, and then obviously expanding software footprint within the organization to more people. And the question I wanted to ask on this one, so as solution providers, both of you, how are you seeing that your own customers who use AX are trying to make sense of the variety of concerns and the requirements that they're trying to address, whether those are driven from management or maybe even driven from their user bases? How are they trying to make sense of those? So Anthony, I'll give this one to you first.
Sure. I mean, one observation I'll make, just kind of looking at some of the points here and the challenges, is probably exactly why a lot of these kind of SaaS ERP systems are salivating, right? Because these, I think, they're saying, well, their customers are running into all these things, and that's exactly what the new AX is going to solve, with Office 365 is going to solve, go down the line, NetSuite, et cetera. So that's kind of what they're saying. Well, we'll take over a lot of these challenges you're having and run that for you. I mean, we're not, when I look at our own customers, I don't think we're seeing as much of this, and we offer, the ability to go to, host it or not. So where our solution lands is not really important to us. So if the customer did want to go completely in the cloud, they have that option. But I haven't heard, and it could just be, or a smaller subset of customers, but we're not really seeing a lot of the challenges that are coming up on this list here. Of course, as technology changes, as new, new versions come out and things like that, they're certainly planning for the future. But I think most of our customers, and maybe we're lucky, just seem to have a pretty good handle on a lot of these things. So just an observation from my side.
And Jason, anything you'd add?
Well, I think for the customers that we talk with that are thinking a little further ahead in this, what I appreciate that I'm seeing from them is less focus on a tool. It's not a tool for reporting. People are looking at this a little bit more broadly. I don't just need to get a certain set of reports in a certain area, but as Anthony mentioned before, security has to come into play. I have to be able to share this information. As number 4 is a big one on here about being able to still get at data from legacy systems and blend all this together. So people that are kind of forward thinking on this within their own companies, they're thinking about it more broadly than I just need a tool and technology. But I think that is interesting when we talk about whether it's Dynamics 365 or alternative solutions out there that are meant to bring all this stuff together. In one of your first slides there, it was a small percentage of people that are looking at Dynamics 365 at this point. They tend to be people that haven't been on AX before, right? They're implementing Dynamics brand new. And I heard a lot of that feedback down in Tampa a couple weeks ago. So the interesting challenge we are hearing from a lot of customers is all that stuff that's going to come in Dynamics 365, that sounds great, but I'm still on AX 2009 for a certain amount of time, or I'm on 2012, we just went live. I'm going to be on that for 3 years, 5 years. How do I achieve some of these same things without, upheaving the whole system to implement the brand new one today? And that's a problem that remains for users.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we have a little more information, some other data there that will get at that. I do want to know. I would love to hear from folks in the audience if that's the kind of challenge that you're dealing with all the cool new technology coming out. How are you struggling to balance that with your current your existing investments? And maybe on a related note, we asked users, do users in your organizations have the tools they need for running reports and analyzing data? More users reported this year that their organizations are improving their ability to get tools out to people who need it. No one actually in the AX segment of responses said that they had universal access. But looking at some of the comments, and we posted just a few representative or interesting ones here, I guess you'd say, that they're using Excel tools, that manipulating the information, few people have that ability, and that there's a kind of core group of creators. I think those were kind of common types of responses that we saw. So I guess I would question whether the tools that people are talking about still kind of often come down to Excel, or people are still very much comparing what tools they have to Excel is one of the sort of the underlying currents I was taking here. And yeah, so the question, and Jason, you did touch on it in the last, and I'll put it to you first, but with these sort of cool new technologies from Microsoft like Power Apps, Power BI obviously, and even things like Common Data Model for the future, can AX users still look to something they know like Excel or other familiar tools? Is that realistic going forward?
Well, I think the reality is people are going to look to it no matter what. I mean, that's where people are very comfortable. And I see Microsoft recognizing that in things that they've added to Excel, initially with Power Query and some of those tools, but ultimately building into Power BI, being able to to consume data within Excel sheets. There's a lot of nice tools out there, and there's people that will use Manager Reporter, for example, for running reports and build up row and column definitions, create these reports, but as soon as a report is run, they export it to Excel because it's where they wanted it in the first place. So that's a little bit of a struggle with the new tools, and users, though, who would prefer to see, can you add some of these capabilities in the place where I'm already really comfortable? And that's where people are going to tend to stay there anyway. So they're looking for things that enable them to be in that comfortable environment, but still get access to data, overcome the complexity of, say, the AX 2012 data model, or have security, or have those kinds of capabilities. I don't see Excel going away at all. Users are just too dependent, they're too comfortable on it.
Anthony, do you agree? Is Excel here to stay, at least for the near to midterm?
Well, we're banking on it. And I think Jason has the same approach. I mean, when we created our products, we really felt that everyone was focused on Excel. So we wanted to make the best Excel interface we could to give people the ability to do what they needed to do. However, we do see that's not everyone. Not everybody's comfortable in Excel. There's probably, pick a number, 50, 60, 70% of the world that is, and they're really good at it, and they don't want to leave it because it's so powerful. So for them, we want to make sure we give them the best Excel interface possible. But I think what's more important, or taking that a step further, is giving the people the ability to choose what interface they want as well. So having that common data platform that is able to attach to other data source or other tools like a Power BI, like Power Tools, like whatever those might be and whatever they might be in the future, I think that's really the most important thing. You want to focus on those core users. I agree. I don't think Excel is going anywhere anytime soon. But you also want to be able to service the other users out there that are not familiar with Excel or just want, a dashboard, the ability to drill down right from my device or from the web, et cetera. But as long as that common data is there with common security where you're not replicating everything, then I think you're serving both markets very well and in a good position as things change into the future. And that's really where we're focused.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would say, just to add my 2 cents on this one, if you watch sort of the changes over time that Microsoft makes to Excel, I mean, they seem to, I'm not seeing anything right now that signals that anything except for it'll continue to work with whatever other data services and sort of reporting services are out there. I mean, they seem to keep Excel in parity so that it's not falling behind, but that it also, I would also say it's not the only reporting tool that Microsoft certainly has its eye on at this point, as sort of on its own without add-ons or without other technology sort of layered on top of it. All right, let me just move on to a sort of slightly different topic, still relevant though, and it's one I always like to talk about, and that's sort of partners' relationship with Dynamics customers, and we asked them in terms of BI and reporting specifically how well they're being served or advised by their partners, and we got a range of answers. As you might imagine, some are getting good advice, some are getting poor advice, some are just getting no advice, which I think is to be expected. I know there's some partners who really just don't tackle that component of businesses' needs. So the question I think is, if you're a user, what are some signs of good or bad relationship between a customer and a reseller, a Dynamics reseller, when it comes to planning reporting? And Anthony, I'll put that one to you first.
Sure. So the partners we work with, they vary, and I think that goes in general for I won't say the quality Dynamics partners, because each of them have their own skill sets, and then maybe that's the most important thing, is that when we work with partners, I think we recognize who's good, at least on the reporting side, versus who's not. And more importantly, the partner needs to recognize what their strengths are versus not. So to me, the good partners get it, and they get more involved in making recommendations and working with customers and bringing in, ourselves and competitors in those types of situations. And then there's other companies who don't get it, and they recognize that they don't get it. And they still will, they'll say, okay, these are the people we recommend. We hear they have good, feedback from other customers, et cetera. And then there's those that are just, and these are the ones we won't work with at all, and they're just making decisions based on whatever gets them excited, whether that's, the margin they're getting from a partner, whether that's, they just have one partner they always recommend because, they have a relationship with them, and they're not really doing the customer justice, right? They're not taking the customer's needs into account. They're not trying to provide expertise or coaching or anything like that, or even recognizing that they don't have that and bring in someone who has that expertise. So that's what we see that's out there. I mean, there's just so many good Dynamics partners, for us, that there's not a reason to work with those that aren't, in our minds, good or at least, making good recommendations to their customers. And if you see the numbers here, I mean, it's a little scary that only 22% or so are getting good advice from their partners. I mean, not sure is worrisome in general. How do you not know whether you're getting good advice or not? I would think you would one way or the other. So that's a little scary too. So, I would expect more from Dynamics partners and the relationships with their customers.
Great. And Jason, anything you would add from your experience?
Well, looking at that chart, if I come at that from a different angle, I think a lot of that ends up being about the priorities that people are focused on because it's what they have to be focused on during an implementation. And most of the BI vendors that end up coming in and providing a solution to a customer later, I think have had this experience of talking to people who don't prioritize this question as much as certainly we would think they ought to, and they find that they should have during the implementation phase. I mean, we're going to have a go-live date. Checks have to go out on that date. There's basic things that have to work. And, prior to implementing AX, people have seen demos, and everything looks great in a demo. We all got access to data. It all looks wonderful. And, of course, the default position, and I would be in this position if I was driving an ERP decision at a customer as well, is I'm going to see what I can get out of the box in the system before I add any other product, BI or otherwise. So it ends up being more often than it should be a little bit of an afterthought in an implementation. And we get to that go live date, and this is where we end up selling an awful lot of our product is in the 6 months after somebody goes live. And there's this realization that either it was neglected or we just didn't have time during implementation to focus on reporting and analytics as much as we should have. And now we're not getting the data that we need. Now there's some realization that the core reporting that comes standard isn't quite going to cover it, and we have to look at something. And we don't necessarily at that point have appetite for spending a lot of dollars or spending a lot of time because we're a little bit stuck on it at this point. And I think that, so when it comes back to poor advice or being not sure, I'm not sure I wouldn't pin that necessarily on the partner. It's a little bit of just the overall, what life is like trying to get AX implemented and live and the limited time that people have. Reporting just too often falls a little bit through the cracks in that process from my experience.
We had an interesting question here, and I think I might, rather than having you each sort of answer it right away, I'll maybe try to ask you to work it into the next phase of the session today, which is to just give both of you a chance to talk a little more about your own company, specifically your own approaches to handling reporting challenges. The question, and I don't know if you actually were able to see it, but it's asking how transformation, to talk about how ISVs themselves are transforming right now in terms of how you provide solutions to the dynamic space, how some of these digital transformation trends, I guess, apply to you, how you're preparing for the changes that are to come. So maybe I'll just ask you to add that or incorporate it into your own presentations that we have coming up. And that's what we'd like to move into now, is those panelist presentations. If you do have any other questions, thanks for feedback. A couple other folks said that, I think to the point earlier also, that they are dealing with sort of an AX 2012 implementation, or they're thinking about hybrid ways to deal with reporting in the context of their solutions that they have today, which is great to hear. So I think we were going to move on to the panelist presentations. And Jason, I think we agreed that you would go first. Let me give you control here. And you'll have 12 minutes. So each of our presenters will take 12 minutes here. And if you do have questions for either of them or for both, please do enter those as we go here. We'll save a few minutes at the end for that as well. And I've now moved over control. So Jason, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay.
And we see that coming up.
I'm not going to do a detailed demo. Yep, I'm not going to do a detailed demo in 10 minutes, but we can look at a few things just to highlight some of so for people that are not familiar with Atlas, Atlas today is used by just about 3,400 companies globally that have Dynamics AX, about 850 in North America. It's been around since what was called Exapta version 1.5, and where most people have always known the product is it's basically the Excel integration tool for AX. We've talked about reporting and analytics today. Atlas also does uploading of master data, making mass changes to data, doing journal uploads, any of those types of things. But the core of the product is meant to address a lot of the challenges we've been talking about today, which is end users needing information and needing it quickly and needing it in a way that's not very IT intensive. I don't want to submit tickets to IT. I don't want to spend a bunch of money, and I don't want to wait for 3 days every time I want to get a question answered. So where we primarily live is within the Office applications, and I've got the Atlas tab here in Excel. We enable Atlas. Atlas will enable you to access whatever data you want. For people that may have had familiarity with the product before, it's a much broader conversation today. We can access just about any data source. Primarily people use it with AX, but I can do read and write integration with Dynamics CRM on-premise or online. And when I say AX, I mean anything AX4 or newer, including Dynamics 365, the last 4 versions of CRM. We read data from data warehouses, from cubes, from external databases when you have history sitting out there in a SQL, an Oracle, a DB2 type of database to be able to grab information and blend it together. And the idea of this tool very much is that it's an end user tool so that a business analyst can do the kinds of things that typically you'd be dependent on IT for. And I'll only just show a couple things in the product, but areas where we really simplify getting at data. And that is being able to browse the complexity of a data model like AX 2012, which is where, when I see shows of hands in events in Tampa, that's where most of the AX users are today, and an awful lot still in 2009. Atlas lets me navigate, as I know, I should go back here, just show you I'm connected to many different data sources at a time here. So I can consume whatever data sources I want, and then I can consume that data any place that I want. Here I'm in Excel, but anything I do within Atlas I can do in PowerPoint. I can do it in Outlook email messages. I can do it in Word documents. And Atlas coupled with Power BI, which is a very powerful combination, lets me also take any of these reports and access them on the web and access any of my information on mobile devices. And I do this all as a business analyst, where I can go get at data like transactional data, and when we browse a data source like AX with its complexity, we don't build a second data warehouse or cube, so I'm always reporting real-time data. But we inherit all kinds of things from the way we uniquely connect to AX, like being able to browse across tables. And as an end user, I don't worry about whether something was included in a data warehouse or a cube initially or not. If it's not available to me, I just go get it from other tables. And I get it in a way where I don't have to understand complex topics like inner joins and outer joins and one-to-one and one-to-many and the kind of stuff you don't want to think about as an end user. The business logic of AX lets me go get to any data that I want. And I'm just pulling a list of customer balances here. I can go get to any data that I want and blend data across multiple tables, blend it across multiple AX databases, in this case across multiple companies in a single database. So generally, I've not seen reporting challenges that we can't solve, and we like to do that in trials. We look at your toughest reporting challenge, and we can generally create something for you within the scope of a free trial. So I mean, just here is a really simple example, but I'm going across 3 different tables just to pull a list of customer balances, and can be going across multiple companies at the same time to get an account from coming from a customer transactions table, the name from the global address book, a balance from, again, coming from customer transactions. We build these things and make hundreds of templates available in our template library. And you can then create and save components, so you're not rebuilding things constantly. So you'll have this cross-section in our user base of some of our customers where everybody's a designer. They all build things. And in other customers, there's a core group that can build things. They can build full reports that can be shared with other users, or you can build components of reports that are very quick and easy to use. So I open up an empty Excel spreadsheet. I'm not always creating things from scratch. I can just go grab, for example, I've got a company lookup. So I can drag and drop components of things that I have built. And if we go back to my library here, so common questions that I'm asked to answer all the time, like that question of customer balances. Or if I go down here and go across data sources, we go get data, again, from any place that I want it. I'm also connected to Dynamics CRM online. I could go pull a list of my accounts from Dynamics CRM. So I could start from the CRM side, and I won't build all this up because we have such a short amount of time here, but a real nice use case here, I'm going to look at the top 10 open opportunities in my CRM system, and then I'm going to merge data. I'm going to connect back from CRM to AX to find open transactions in AX. I want to see if open balances in my ERP system might prevent me from closing an order in my CRM system. The kinds of things that are typically, very, very complex are things that become end user capability. So I'm just going to look at open information that's open in AX. And I can join data across multiple data sources, again, without being IT dependent. So I've got columns coming from CRM, I've got columns coming from AX. So I'm going through all of this very quickly, but of course I can, happy to do more detailed demos. But the data then can be surfaced any place that I want. I'm looking here at an Excel-based report that we use for a weekly pipeline. You can do project-based reports out of AX. A list of my top 10 open balances, and from here I can switch over to email, for example. Atlas is the same to me no matter where I go to use it. In an email message, I have access to the product. So I can come in here and get, let's say from CRM, that exact same thing that was just in PowerPoint, list of my top 5 largest open opportunities. And I can insert things directly into an email message. So one of the great things about the product here is it's absolutely consistent. It doesn't matter whether I'm working with AX data, CRM data, Cube data, historical data from another database. It doesn't matter whether I'm in an email message, I'm in our own desktop or dashboard product, in PowerPoint, in Outlook, in Excel, or even taking this data and feeding it out to Power BI. For anybody, and I recognize a few names on the call that are current Atlas users, And we've now added a new tool for automation. So Atlas reports now can be saved and scheduled to refresh on any schedule. I can refresh it every 15 minutes, every hour, overnight. And so we feel like you get this combination now of Atlas and Power BI, and I can do everything I want to do with AX data, from initial data migration through full financial reporting and planning, dashboards and visualizations, have reports on mobile phones, have them in PowerPoint. And between Atlas and Power BI, I can check every one of those boxes at perhaps a tenth the cost of any other combination of solutions that would do those same, give me those same sets of capabilities. And importantly for me, low IT involvement, the kinds of things that I do as a business analyst, not submitting this stuff to developers or consultants or my IT team every time I need something new. And I'm not sure, given time, how I'm doing right there, Jason. I didn't look at the time when I started, but
You've got about 3 minutes, if you want.
Okay. So one of the things that I would show you that we're doing a lot of, and I'm doing this now internally with my own reporting, we really recommend people take a look at Power BI, because whether you're ready to move to Dynamics 365 yet or not, you can see the reality of where Microsoft is heading in terms of its BI strategy. And that increasingly will be the common data model as an Azure-hosted data warehouse. You can even replicate local data up into that data warehouse. And Power BI as a tool for visualizations and dashboards. So what we've done within our strategy is really just embraced what Microsoft is doing with Power BI, so that we can work very closely with it. We fill the biggest gap with Power BI today, which is how do I get the data into Power BI, perhaps merging across multiple data sources, and have it reflect my own security all the way back to my profile inside of AX. So if I show you here just a concept of a snippet, so pulling in things that I've built before, this is one that I use a lot to showcase Atlas and Power BI together. I've got a quick snippet, so this is something that can be built in a matter of minutes within Atlas, linking across multiple tables. I can build this in about 5 minutes. It's pulling data from about 8 different AX tables, including address information. So all those great demos that you see with Power BI, there's always that gap of we're going to have all the IT people and the system people build this and get it to Power BI for you. What we've done with Atlas now is enabled snippets so that you can create things quickly and share them with other users. So you can see I get this full data set, and let's get it across multiple companies. So across all my manufacturing companies, I've pulled invoice line detail with salesperson, with item information, with city, state, and zip code for the customer. I pull that all that information together. I save this into a report up to OneDrive. And in my automation tool now, with my Atlas report, I've scheduled these reports in particular to save, I think these refresh every night at 4 a.m. I can have them save and replace the existing spreadsheet, and it could just be a library of reports that people go get from OneDrive. Every day get the updated reports. Or I use this now to build a Power BI dashboard that ties all the way back to my AX security, and Power BI built off of a OneDrive-based Excel spreadsheet all becomes refreshable. So we fill the big gap for Power BI, and then Power BI gets every one of my Atlas reports any place that I want it, Windows Phone even, my Android phone, or on the web. So we'd really encourage people to look at those, and it's something we can go through in a much more detailed presentation to show you. This little glimpse of what I've just done here is something I do for my own internal reporting today now. I'm using Atlas to grab the data, and I have it on my phone via Power BI.
Thanks, and Jason, we are at time. All right, thank you very much, and I will, all right, perfect. And now I want to hand things over to Anthony. You should be getting control here in just a moment.
Great, thanks, Jason. All right. So I do have a couple slides, but I won't bore you too much, I don't think. So we sell only one product. It's called de facto planning, and it is a fully integrated budgeting, planning, forecasting, consolidation, and reporting application. So you buy one product, and all that capability is there. So the nice thing is all of our customers are not just using de facto simply for reporting, but they're using it for all these other things as well. They're budgeting and forecasting, things like advanced business logic where, it's not just a formula, but something that's more procedural in nature, allocations, intercompany eliminations, foreign currency exchange. All those things are being done inside of de facto. Now, we take a little different approach than Atlas, which I'll tell you, but you'll see a lot of overlap there, although we don't really compete with one another, which I find interesting. Where we do compete, just to give you some idea on positioning, this is from a BPM Partners survey. BPM Partners is an analyst specifically around our corporate performance management industry. You can see where we're positioned here pretty well as a robust customer product, and we're considered accepted based on the number of users that we have, in that we're not in the tens of thousands of users like some of these other products. Now, more importantly, though, if you see customer satisfaction, you see de facto way up here, and the big three, which are far more expensive than de facto, all have much, much lower customer satisfaction. In fact, Oracle's almost off the list here. So it just gives you an idea where we're positioned in the market. I mean, we like to, or Microsoft likes to think of de facto as basically their answer to Hyperion. So if you're familiar with Hyperion, you get a good taste for where de facto plays in the market. How we're different than Atlas, like Jason said, they go directly against the data in AX, CRM, et cetera. De facto takes a different approach. We do have our own data warehouse that we bring data into, and the reason for that is a lot of our customers like to marry that data together and have that all kind of pre-aggregated and pre-calculated for them without having to write queries or understand where data is in the different tables. They just kind of have it at their fingertips. So we have full integration with all of Dynamics AX as well as any other Dynamics application and any other ERP system as well. So if you have data, and a lot of our customers are multinational, where maybe they have AX in the U.S. and they have Sun in Asia and they have Oracle in Europe, de facto enables you to bring that data together and consolidate in one centralized location. Additionally, if you have other data sources as well, we can bring all that data in, including any offline data that's in Excel, we would load right into de facto. We also have an integration with the Azure Machine Learning platform for predictive forecasting, so that's really nice. If your data is in at an actual level in your de facto model, you can then do predictive forecasting off of that. And so that kind of builds on the capabilities of de facto to do the planning and forecasting where you're doing something that's more traditionally manual, but now you have the ability to kind of automate that process and let the intelligence of Azure Machine Learning or even SQL 2016 take care of those things for you. Now, we do use both the relational database and the Cube Technology Analysis Services. All of that is completely managed for you by de facto. The benefit of this is it allows you to model your business, you'll hear the term model a lot, to exactly how you make decisions, not necessarily how CRM is organized or AX is organized. You can now take that data and organize it in a way that is meaningful to your business, and, by the way, do all sorts of what-if analysis. So what if I want to spin up a new business? What if I want to make an acquisition? What if I want to divest or look at a reorg for next year on a pro forma basis? De facto allows you to do all those things in one location. Okay, Excel is going to be our main user interface. We're going to see that in the demo. But because of the data model that we've organized, Power BI will natively connect to de facto, and we have our own web and mobile capabilities as well. And the nice thing about the web and mobile is I can build a report in Excel and use it on my phone. I can build a report on my tablet and use it in Excel. So I could build anywhere, use anywhere. And it's all hitting that same centralized model. And again, that model is always secured. Whether I'm an AX user or I'm not an AX user, it doesn't matter. I can have my own de facto license to hit that data. So I do not have to be an AX user or CRM or whatever to be able to hit de facto. So that's another benefit of de facto. Okay. And again, we'll talk about this modeling a bit. I mentioned this what-if analysis. And the idea is that I can model my business, I can analyze the impact of that, and then I can plan around that, right? And we're going to see a little bit of this in the demo right now. So let's just jump over to that so we get a quick feel for that. Okay. So much like what Jason showed in Atlas, we're Excel-based. The difference is now we're not going directly against AX, we're going against the de facto model, which in this case is an analysis services cube with a lot of intelligence built in. Now, the benefit of this is you can create any report that you like. You can make it look like anything that you want. So your board book, your monthly reporting that you need to get out, the formatting, all those kinds of things you take complete advantage of. Fully capable inside of Excel. Okay, so there's no limitation there. The benefit of de facto is you can see based on what I've chosen here. So here I'm looking at gross margin, right? And I can look at, here's my data. I'm looking at a monthly trend. If I change this, and then let's say I want to zero suppress any missing data, so I click on that, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at gross margin. If I change gross margin and I want to look at pre-tax income, I just hit pre-tax income, and now I can see I have my full income statement here down to pre-tax income. Now this is something we call an expansion, which is really nice because based on the hierarchy in de facto of that dimension, that data will automatically come into my report and it will be formatted correctly. So the nice thing is if a new account gets added to AX, if a new account gets added to CRM, whatever that might be, it flows into de facto automatically and gets formatted correctly. So they really become zero maintenance reports. So that's really, really beneficial. The other nice thing too is because it's multidimensional, I can look at data in any way that I want. So if I said, you know what, I want to look at not a trend report, I want to look at a consolidated income statement. Well, if I click on this and I change this to my entity or company dimension, all of a sudden now I'm able to see a consolidated view of my business. And if I didn't want to go 5 levels down, maybe I just wanted to go 2 levels down, right? I can see now exactly what my business looks like, right? And so I can do this for my actuals, my budget, my forecast, etc. And just like that, I'm able to view this report. Another great benefit too is when data comes back from Excel, it is just a value that comes back. So there's no exporting, no copy-paste values in order to share this with anybody else. I can just send this report to anybody and they can literally run with it. If they have de facto, they can keep drilling and doing what they want. If they don't, they can still look at this report without having to do anything. Okay, so this is just an example of an ad hoc report. I can also have books of reports, right? So this is something pretty standard for us where I may have a book of reports from my customers. And maybe I want to look at, monthly data. So I want to look at month-over-month data, right? So this is an example of that board book kind of view of things. And you can see here, so I have my current month, which is April, right? Actual versus budget, dollar percent. I'm looking at it for year-to-date and then versus last year as well. So really very easily I can do that. Now, when I refresh this report, so I'm going to just change this to May, you're going to see that this report refreshes, but it also refreshed 5 other reports as part of this. So that's how fast the response time is the ability to bring that data back and refresh it automatically. Again, there's only values here that are coming back. Even on the roll-ups, it is just values. Even the calculations here, like actual versus budget, this is an intelligent calculation that looks like if it's a revenue account, it will say if it's higher, that would show as a positive. If it's lower, it would show as a negative, as it's doing in many of these cases, because we're looking at gross margin. However, I can use full Excel formulas if I wanted to. So I'm not losing any of the ability to use Excel in the way I do things. Okay? If I look at my income statement trend report here, I can start drilling on my data. So we have some capability we call investigation. So what I can do right now is say, okay, show me all the companies that represent this $33 million in revenue. So I just say, okay, and just like that, it gives me all the companies. If I said, you know what, I want to see all the products underneath here, I just say, give me all the products underneath here, right? So that's all I need to do. Okay, if I wanted to see, all right, here's my truck that's $292,000. I want to drill back to AX and bring back the transactions that are associated with that. I can simply come out to here to the sales transactions, say okay, and what it does is it goes back to AX and brings back all the transactions that are associated with that value. So I don't need to jump all over or connect to another system or do anything. I'm able to do that right from Excel, including opening up the document right from Excel if I'm using the document imaging capability. So very, very easy to do. Everything is centralized inside Excel. One of the other benefits of de facto is the ability to do budgeting and forecasting. So let me just do that quickly. So I'm just going to pull up an example dashboard here. So again, we're using Excel. These are just standard Excel charts, right? They're live against de facto, so I could change this to the US. You see my data up to date. one of the benefits of de facto with budgeting is I have full workflow capability. So I can go through an approval process and do whatever it is I need to do there. Okay, but I won't show you that because we're short on time. But let me just go over here. I'll show you New York doesn't have a budget, right? And I can see they have an entered budget. So here I can go and plan my data, and here's my New York budget. So I can enter any value I want, right? I can use formulas if I wanted, right? I could enter comments if I want. And all this is stored inside de facto. So you can see, unlike traditional budget processes that most of our customers have, I'm not emailing spreadsheets around and then emailing them back to somebody to consolidate manually. I'm able to interact with my data. This is live against the database, right? So as soon as this is done and I say refresh, all my data rolls up, right, to net income. And although I've entered New York, it's already rolled up to U.S., worldwide, et cetera. So all that happens automatically. If I want to do more sales detail or salary detail, I can even do salary planning. I can add a new hire, et cetera, et cetera. So all this capability is right there in de facto to enter this data. So I'm not going to get into this just because of lack of time, but I just want you to see how easy it is to work with it. And all this data is in one place. So my actuals from AX, my budget that I'm entering here, I can have any number of forecasts, right? So if I look at my scenarios, we have customers with multiple months of forecasts that they want to control and enter. There's full security behind this, so I can lock any data down, not only from a read-only perspective, but from a read-write perspective as well. Okay. All right, so with that, again, there's a ton of business logic capabilities, things like allocations, things like foreign currency, all that capability is built in. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for joining today. I'll just put my contact info up here in case you guys want to reach out. I'm happy to take you through a much deeper demo than that when you guys have time. Okay, thanks, Jason.
Great, thank you, Anthony. And yeah, I want to take any questions that anyone has in the audience right now. I also want to remind folks we do have a quick survey that will pop up after this session. Just takes 15 or 20 seconds, and we really appreciate any feedback. What you think about this format? Would you like to see more demo? Would you like to see more data? Would you like to see a longer session? And really anything you think about today's event would really be appreciated. So looking at the question queue here, one thing that came in was asking, this is I think for Jason, asking about Atlas 6.1 and AX 4.0. Is Atlas 6.1 available for 4?
Yes, absolutely. It goes all the way back currently to AX4. It's one of the nice things about the product is when you go to the BI sessions, particularly the ones that you'll see Microsoft give at the user group summit, a lot of stuff looks really fantastic, and then you say, well, what do I need in order to be able to do that? Well, it's SharePoint Enterprise this, it's Office 2016, it's 2012 R3 CU something. With Atlas, generally none of that applies. Anything back to AX4, anything back to CRM 2011, SQL databases going back to SQL 2002. Generally, whatever your environment is, you can install Atlas in that environment and do all the things, and of course, much, much more than what I showed you in those few minutes. But yeah, Chris certainly absolutely works with AX4.
All right, another question that came in here. For both products, using Excel, how would you handle any sort of line limitations that Excel has that Power BI does not have? So, Anthony, why don't I give this one to you first?
If I understand correctly, it's the limitation of Excel, how many rows you can have,
Correct.
things like that?
Yeah, how many rows, I think, was the question.
So one of the capabilities we have within Excel is to limit the number of records that come back. So if you do have, you could set it not to exceed, and then the user would get a warning that, it's going to return 10,000 rows, 100,000 rows, 1 million rows, whatever that is, and you could set that limit so that no one runs into that limitation.
All right, great. Jason?
Well, and so Atlas kind of has that same capability, but I think there's a sort of a fundamental question behind the question, which is where are you building, what are you trying to achieve with the report? So if you're just trying to pull that raw set of data, sometimes it needs to get beyond that, what is it, million row limit. in some versions of Excel. And in that case, if you're just pulling the data dump and building a dashboard or pivots or those types of things on top of it, then instead of right in native Excel, you do that in a Power Pivot or Power Query type of tool, and then you're not restricted by that limit. If you're doing a dashboard, that's typically the type of thing. I mean, most of the reports that we're going to build and people working inside of Excel, and I think this is probably the same with de facto as well, they're not just raw data dumps. Like there's a more sophisticated question at hand when you go to build the report, and you're building it to pull just the specific data you need for that answer.
Okay, great.
If that answer,
well, we are at we are at the top of the hour here. If you do have any other questions, obviously Anthony and Jason will both be happy to take those after the session today. Thanks to everyone for their feedback, for your attention, and Anthony, Jason, thank you both for sharing your insight, for sharing a little bit about your solutions too.
Great. Thanks, Jason. And Jason, take care, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and we're going to wrap it up there. We did record today's event as well. We'll be making that available too. With that, we'll conclude today's event. Have a great day, everybody.